Hello and welcome to EE 447. I'm your instructor, Gregory Myers. In this video, we're going to talk a little bit about page and section navigation. We're going to start by creating a main landing site, main page for your documentation, as well as a secondary page for your personal bio. The only assumption that we're going to make in this video is that you have your file structure set up as such to where you have a HTML subfolder. And so we're going to begin by putting the main.html in the root of our demos folder, and then any subsequent additional pages are going to go into the HTML folder. The other thing that we want to do in this one is we want to make sure and separate as much, if not all, of the styling information into a separate CSS file. And so we'll keep the appearance aspects of our HTML very minimal. We may, for instance, simply use H1 through H6 or the width of a table. But other than that, everything else appearance-wise is going to then go into our CSS. So to begin with, the first thing I want you to do is I want you to go ahead and go to File, New File. Go ahead and create a HTML page. And this first one we are simply going to call main. So go ahead and save it in the root of your demos folder. Capital or lowercase is fine. So it's going to be main.html. And then while we're at it, go ahead and create a new file. Once again, HTML page. And we're going to go to File, Save As. Under HTML, we're going to call this one our bio, bio.html. And then two additional files. We need to go ahead and create the corresponding style sheets for both. I'm not going to flush these out in this video. I'm just going to get us started. So we want to go ahead and create a style sheet. Go ahead and save this one. We're going to have one for our main. Just to avoid confusion at this point, we're actually going to keep the same naming convention for our style sheet as we will for our HTML file. We're actually going to see we don't have to do it this way and later on, but for this assignment, or for this, excuse me, this video, we're going to go ahead and create the two separate style sheets. So new file. Oh, sorry, I lost track of what I'm doing here. Save as, and then under the HTML, go ahead and call this one bio.css. Okay. All right, so we should have 4 files. We're mainly going to focus on the HTML for this one. However, though, we do want to first go ahead and link our HTML to our style. And to do that, we want to reference one of our prior examples, and that was the example of the external HTML. It was version 2, in which what we did there is we specified in the head, we specified a link, and the type of link being text CSS, and then the actual path, relative path to it. So first of all, in the title, we're going to go and call this one main for right now. Let's go ahead and set up our HTML CSS link. So it's going to be a style sheet. The type is going to be text CSS, and then the href is going to simply be equal to, for this one, main.html is going to be equal to main.css. Remember, this is a self-closing tag. And then for the bio.html, we want to do the same thing. Title of this is just simply going to be bio, and the link, I'll just start off rel tag, and then the style sheet type is going to be text CSS, and then for the href is going to be equal to, this one you have to be a little more careful when you pick it since there's multiple files. So that's going to be the bio.css. All right, so go ahead and save that. We're gonna spend most of our time on our main.html. You can open up your prior examples if you need some help, but I think that's going to be the extent of what we'll need from that file. We'll start by looking at our main.html. And the idea is essentially that you're trying to build a lab manual. So what we're going to do is under this body, we are going to go ahead and use the H1 tags because it's good to get some exposure with them. Just remember that they are not supposed to be used exclusively for style. You can use the ID attribute with them as well as the class attribute. So be able to further enhance the style. Think of this more, once again, as structural, so that this is the level 1 heading. And so what we want to do is we want to call this our EE447 lab manual. And we're going to have several parts to it, and we're going to work on this. I'm only interested in structure right now. Like I said, we'll worry about the aesthetics. We're going to have at least 3 parts to it. One is going to be the useful links. The second one is going to be demos. And then the third one is going to be your assignments. And so I'm going to put all 3 of these under level 2 headings. We'll come back to that. We may refine that as we go along. And as we expect, we saw in earlier videos, there's going to be a lot of these. So immediately following each one of these H1 tags, we want to go ahead and include a table. And what we're going to do is we're going to set this table up very generically. We're going to start off with 2 columns in the head. So 1 row and then 2 columns. And right now all I'm doing is I'm just setting up the basics, if you would, for it, not the details yet. As a matter of fact, we're going to come back to the details in just a second. But what we want to do here is essentially we want to have the first column be the topic and the second column being the description. Okay, so name, topic, either is fine. So we're going to stick with topic. And then in the body, we want to go ahead and flush out several rows to begin with. And once again, all these are going to be 2 columns. There may be nested tables as you see fit, but at the very least, we want to go ahead and pre-populate this with a few rows. 4 should be enough to get started with. Basically, we just want to have the structure in place. Okay, and remember once again that we're going to try to handle the style in a separate style sheet. So if we style the borders or style the text, we want to style them separately. So we're going to have 3 of these tables. The first one is going to be under the useful links. So what you want to do is go ahead and copy your entire table under demos, and then make a 3rd copy of your table under assignments. Okay. Once again, right now, a pretty basic looking landing page here. Underneath the H1 tag, you want to go ahead and create a placeholder for a paragraph. And this is where you describe the purpose of this lab manual. Okay, this is up to you. I'm going to let you have some control over this. The idea is that you want to put a paragraph there outlining what you intend to do in this lab manual. Now, in the prior demos, we also talked about the need to link these topics to both internal and external references. So under the useful links, I would expect those to be external references, with the demos being your own internal references as well as the assignments. And then the last piece of this is going to be down here at the bottom after the last table. We want to go ahead and use the nav tag. And so go ahead and create a navigation tag. And then what we want to do is we want to start off by creating several navigation, I guess you could say, goals. Okay, in other words, where do we want to go not only locally, but also for remote resources? So I suppose another way of putting that is you want to have a target for several of these navigations locations here. So to begin with, what we want to do is we want to make sure that we have the ability to navigate back to the main page. Now that seems a little redundant because we're on main, but the idea is this navigation section of your document should be able to then be copied and pasted to all of your other documents, and will effectively, for this structure, will effectively behave like a back button. It's not going to be the same as the back button, but it is, when you're linking static pages, it's often important to go ahead and link back to the main. There will be a minor change that will have to be made because of the structure that we have. But at the very least, what we want is we're going to have several A tags, starting with a href equal to, first and foremost, this document itself. So we're going to link back to our main.html. Okay, now this path is actually going to change. Okay, so we'll come back to that when we do the bio. The second one that I want you to link in your navigation to begin with is going to be your bio, which you can either use Visual Studio's pick URL, or you can remember how to navigate into a subfolder. In this case, we want to point this second link to your bio, such that you can get to your bio no matter where you are or wherever you copy and paste this navigation portion to another page. And then thirdly, we want to be able to reference your Wix page. Okay, and so what we're going to do is we're going to start off, I'm going to leave this one blank. So I'm just going to put a £sign in there as a default so that we can pass with our validation. But you want this to point to your Wix site. And then the last link, we just simply want to point back to UAB. And so we're just going to go to www.uab.edu. And we're going to specify, we'll probably abbreviate for this one since this is a navigation element. I'm going to go ahead and save that. Now let's take a second to take a look at what our page looks like so far. We should actually have a piece of this already working, and you can just launch your main.html. Still not the most attractive looking page in the world. However, though, you should be able to then go to UAB's website. 1 second. I forgot the HTTPS in front of it, so let's go back and change that real quick. HTTPS. All right, one more time here. Let me reload the page and then go there, and there we go. It takes us now to the home page for UAB. You do have to make sure to preface it with either HTTP or HTTPS. For the Wix page, the same thing. For the local pages, though, you should not have to do that. And so if you come back here now to your lab manual page, if you select your bio, it should go to an empty file. But if you notice, the path says bio.html. One of the things that you probably want to do early on, just to give yourself some assurances that something's going to happen here. and we'll just say, we'll put H1. In this case, I'll put Gregory Myers bio, and then under a P tag, I'm just going to say more coming soon. All right, so go ahead and save that. And now when we go back to our bio, we should at least see something. Okay, so it's always good to have a placeholder. All right, you are going to be responsible for creating and linking your Wix page now to the bottom of your navigation. So I'll leave that to you, but we do have one more thing that we want to handle. So how are we going to manage to navigate back to main from the bio without using the back button? And so because of the hierarchical nature of this structure, that was intentional to have the main outside because we're going to have multiple demo styles, not just simply HTML. What I want you to do now is on each one of your HTML documents that you plan on linking to is you're also going to have this navigation snippet. However, there's going to be one change to it. So if you think about it, let's go ahead and copy this whole navigation element, put it in your bio, in the end of your body. And if you think about it, if you're in the bio, you want to go back to main. And so first of all, if you're in the bio resides in the same location as you currently are in, so you can take off the HTML path. But then you have to think about how do you get to main? And so in order to get to main, you actually have to go to the parent directory. And so now when we are in our bio, we go back down here to our bio, you'll see now that you have your navigation links, your Wix page still needs to be dealt with. But if you go back to main, it'll take you up a directory to your main.html. So this is just one way of navigating around our little static website here. Now, the last part of this video, we want to go back to our main.html. We anticipate this main.html growing pretty large, especially the more demos that you add, the more useful links. And much like the problem that some of the longer Wikipedia articles have, you don't want to just have the user scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. And so to continue with this theme of navigation, we want to do some anchor tags in our main.html. Now there's a couple of ways that we can go about doing this. What we're going to do though is we're going to sort of follow roughly the Wikipedia principle in that they use the ID of a specific element as the anchor and then reference it using a hyperlink to get to it and the pound sign. So what we have to do is we have to carefully ID some of our elements. And so in this particular example, I intentionally set it up so that we have these H2 level text that we can then leverage for our anchor points. And so what I want you to do is I want you to go back to your body one more time. And after this paragraph that indicates the purpose of this lab manual, I want you to create one more H2 tag. And effectively what we want to call this is our table of contents of our page. And so we'll just call this contents. And in that contents, then what we want to do is we want to have the links that correspond to the other anchors within the document. So one of the things that we can do is we can go ahead and create another table. You can also do it as a list. So just for a little bit of variety, we'll go ahead and create it as a list. But once again, you can do it as a table. Wikipedia effectively does it as a ordered list. So in this case, what we'll do is we'll have an ordered list, and where the list items themselves reference the other portions of our document. And to do that, we're going to insert our anchors using our href. And to start off with, I'm just simply going to use the pound sign and then we'll reference them in just a second here. So it's going to be useful links. This is spelled the exact same way that this is the human-friendly part of it, rather, so it can be spelled with the space. The second one is going to be the demos. And then the third one is going to be the assignments. Okay, now to make this work, right now these links are connected to nothing. You need to go into the corresponding H2 elements, and you want to identify a tag, or an ID, excuse me, for that tag. In this case, we're going to call it useful links, but we have to replace that the space with an underscore. So what we're going to do is we're going to call this useful underscore links. For the second one, we want to set up the ID as equal to demos. And for the third one, then the ID is just simply going to be equal to assignments. Okay, let me go ahead and save that. No, nothing changed necessarily in the appearance of our document here yet, and we really don't have anything working necessarily. But now what we have to do is we have to come up here and we have to actually populate each one of the hrefs. In other words, we want to tie it to those anchor points now. Okay, so to tie this now to the anchor points, we want to come back and we want to replace the pound signs in each one. These are actually offset them, I guess you could say. And in the beginning, or in front of that pound sign, we want to specify main.html as the page itself, and then we use that ID, in this case it was useful underscore links, as where to point on that page. Okay, and so right now we're just going to go ahead and spell out main.html. There is another way of going about doing this. We'll do the same with the demos, and then lastly main.html assignments. The reason that I like for us to do it this way is because of the fact that then as you build a larger site, much like in Wikipedia's case where you can actually reference one of the anchor points, you can actually send someone, if you have give them the full path to the page, you can actually send them the anchor point and say, look at this section as opposed to the entire document. So a good example of that would be going back to the United States, Presidents of the United States example that we saw in one of our earlier videos, in that you actually can anchor, for instance, to a particular portion of the document. So we'll take a look at the subsequent public office example, and if you right click and inspect that element, you'll see that there is the ID, and also you'll see that the ID then is appended to the URL itself. So that allows for you then, if you were to take this URL with the anchor point included, it would take you immediately there. Okay, so it would make it the prominent point in your browser. All right, so for this particular example, to get this to work, you will need to grow your main.html. So I just encourage you to simply keep adding rows to your tables, keep growing it, and then once again populate your Wix hyperlink, as well as expand or work on your bio. Hopefully you found this video useful. As always, if you've got any questions or comments, don't hesitate to let me know. Thank you for watching.